It was 7 years of marriage before I got the first sign that he was sleeping with my best friend. Freya was my maid of honor for crying out loud. I trusted her with everything, my secrets, my fears, and even my husband. How could I have known that the two people I trusted most in the world were betraying me behind my back? It started with little things. I remember one evening when we were all at a dinner party. I noticed that Daniel seemed more interested in talking to Freya than to me. At first, I brushed it off. We had always gotten along well, and I thought it was nice that my husband and my best friend could be friends too. But then, there were moments like that. Moments where I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. Daniel would laugh at her jokes a little too hard, and his eyes would linger on her just a bit too long. I began to notice how his mood would change whenever Freya was around. He was more relaxed, more charming, almost like he was trying to impress her. I started feeling uneasy, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. After all, Freya was practically family. One day, I found a text message on Daniel's phone. It wasn't anything overtly incriminating, just a simple, "had a great time yesterday" from Freya. But something about it felt wrong. Daniel had never mentioned seeing Freya the day before. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying they had just run into each other while he was out running errands. But the unease in my stomach wouldn't go away. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself that I was overthinking. But once that seed of doubt was planted, it began to grow. I started paying more attention, noticing how often Daniel and Freya would find reasons to be alone together. At parties, they would slip away to have private conversations. If we were all watching a movie, they would sit too close, their shoulders touching just a little too long. The worst part was how Freya treated me. She was still sweet and caring, still the best friend I had always known. But there was something in her eyes when she looked at me, something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't guilt, not exactly, but a sort of wariness, like she was always an edge around me. I tried to talk to Daniel about it a few times, but he always had an excuse. "You're imagining things," he would say. "Freya and I are just friends." He would look at me with those earnest eyes of his, and for a moment I would believe him. But then I would catch them sharing a look, a private smile, and the doubt would come rushing back. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to confront Freya directly. I invited her over for coffee, determined to find out the truth. When she arrived, she was her usual cheerful self, chatting away about her latest work project. I let her talk for a while, trying to gather my courage. Finally, I couldn't wait any longer. "Freya," I said, interrupting her, "I need to ask you something." She looked at me, her smile faltering slightly. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath. "Is something going on between you and Daniel?" Freya's eyes widened in surprise. "What? No, of course not. Why would you even think that?" I felt a flicker of relief at her denial, but it was quickly replaced by doubt. "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "It's just, I've noticed the way you two act around each other. It feels like something's changed." Freya reached across the table and took my hand, her grip firm. "Listen to me, Sarah. There is nothing going on between Daniel and me. We're just friends, I swear." Her words were so sincere, so convincing that for a moment I almost believed her. But then I remembered all the little things that had been bothering me, all the moments that didn't add up. "Why didn't you tell me you saw him the other day?" I asked, pulling my hand away. "You texted him that you had a great time, but he never mentioned seeing you." Freya's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, that! I was just being polite. We ran into each other at the grocery store. and we ended up chatting for a bit. It was nothing. I wanted to believe her, but something in her tone didn't sit right with me. Are you sure that's all it was? I pressed. Freya's smile wavered, and for the first time, I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Guilt. Sarah, I promise you, there is nothing going on. You have to trust me. I was a trusting fool and somehow convinced myself that my best friend would never betray me. Until a few weeks later, when I paid Freya a surprise visit on my way from getting groceries. I saw my husband's car parked outside her house. He was supposed to be at work that Saturday morning. I did not knock, and the door was unlocked. I stepped inside quietly, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear soft laughter coming from upstairs, followed by muffled voices. Every instinct told me to turn around, to leave before I saw something I couldn't unsee. But I couldn't stop myself. I moved slowly, one step at a time, the sound of my heartbeats drowning out everything else. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard a moan. Freya's voice, unmistakable. My stomach twisted in knots as I crept closer to her bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. Peeking through the crack, I saw them, Daniel and Freya, tangled together in the sheets, their bodies moving in a rhythm that spoke of familiarity, of passion that I hadn't seen in our marriage for a long time. His hands roamed over her body in a way that made my chest ache, his lips tracing a path down her neck as she gasped and clung to him. The intimacy between them was undeniable, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. I watched in silent horror, unable to tear my eyes away from the sight of my husband making love to my best friend. Tears welled up in my eyes as I backed away from the door, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The betrayal cut deep, slicing through the remnants of trust I had clung to. I couldn't stay there, couldn't bear to witness any more of their deceit. I turned and fled down the stairs, my legs shaking beneath me. The door slammed behind me as I stumbled outside, my vision blurred with tears. The world seemed to spin around me as I tried to process what I had just seen, the weight of their betrayal crashing down on me like a wave. I couldn't believe that the two people I loved most in the world could do this to me. I confronted Daniel that night. He tried to deny it at first, but then knew there was no. His shoulders slumped as he let out a heavy sigh, avoiding my eyes. "I'm sorry," he muttered, the words sounding hollow and empty. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." The anger that had been simmering inside me boiled over. It just happened. With my best friend, Daniel. How could you do this to me? To us? My voice shook with a mix of rage and heartbreak. I had imagined this confrontation 100 different ways, but nothing could have prepared me for the pain of hearing his weak excuses. He finally looked at me, guilt written all over his face. "I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know what came over me. I was lonely and she was there." His words were like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. But there was no excuse for what he had done, no justification for betraying our vows, and for throwing away everything we had built together. As he tried to reach out to me, I stepped back, the space between us feeling like a chasm that could never be crossed again. Freya tried to reach out to me, tried to apologize, but I couldn't face her. The thought of seeing her, of hearing her voice, made me sick to my stomach. I cut her out of my life completely, blocking her number and unfollowing her on social media. I couldn't bear to be reminded of what she had done. As for Daniel, I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to leave him, to end our marriage and never look back. But another part of me still loved him, still wanted to believe that we could somehow walk through this. Every time I looked at him, I saw the betrayal in his eyes. Every time he touched me, I flinched, remembering that those same hands had touched her. But I couldn't give up. Not yet. We had built a life together and I wasn't ready to throw it all away. So we kept going, day by day, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Some days, I felt like I was drowning in my own pain, suffocating under the weight of my anger and sadness. But other days, I caught glimpses of the man I had fallen in love with, the man I had married. And I clung to those moments, hoping that they were a sign that we could find our way back to each other. And as for Freya, I never spoke to her again. She had been my best friend, but she had also been the one to betray me in the worst possible way. And that was something I could never forgive.